A day's lodging. "It isn't my cabin," Messner answered. "I just found it a few minutes ago. Come right in and camp. Plenty of room, and you won't need your stove. There's room for all." At the sound of his voice, the woman peered at him with quick curiousness. "Get your things off," her companion said to her. "I'll unhitch and get the water so we can start cooking." Messner took the thawed salmon outside and fed his dogs. He had to guard them against the second team of dogs, and when he had re-entered the cabin, the other man had unpacked the sled and fetched water. Messner's pot was boiling. He threw in the coffee, settled it with half a cup of cold water, and took the pot from the stove. He thawed some sourdough biscuits in the oven, at the same time heating a pot of beans he had boiled the night before, and that had ridden frozen on the sled all morning. Removing his utensils from the stove so as to give the newcomers a chance to cook, he proceeded to take his meal from the top of his grub box, himself sitting on his bedroll. Between mouthfuls, he talked trail and dogs with the man, who with head over the stove was thawing the ice from his moustache. There were 2 bunks in the cabin, and into one of them, when he had cleared his lip, the stranger tossed his bedroll. "We'll sleep here," he said, "unless you prefer this bunk. You're the first comer, and you have first choice, you know." "That's all right," Messner answered. "One bunk's just as good as the other." He spread his own bedding in the second bunk and sat down on the edge. The stranger thrust a physician's small traveling case under his blankets at one end to serve for a pillow. "Doctor?" Messner asked. "Yes," came the answer, "but I assure you I didn't come into the Klondike to practice." The woman busied herself with cooking, while the man sliced bacon and fired the stove. The light in the cabin was dim, filtering through in a small window made of onion skin writing paper and oiled with bacon grease, so that John Messner could not make out very well what the woman looked like. Not that he tried. He seemed to have no interest in her, but she glanced curiously from time to time into the dark corner where he sat. "Oh, it's a great life," the doctor proclaimed enthusiastically, pausing from sharpening his knife on the stovepipe. "What I like about it is the struggle, the endeavor with one's own hands, the primitiveness of it, the realness." "The temperature is real enough," Messner laughed. "Do you know how cold it actually is?" the doctor demanded. The other shook his head. "Well, I'll tell you. 74 below zero by spirit thermometer on the sled. That's 106 below freezing point. Too cold for traveling, eh?" "Practically suicide," was the doctor's verdict. "One exerts himself. He breathes heavily, taking into his lungs the frost itself. It chills his lungs, freezes the edges of the tissues. He gets a dry hacking cough as the dead tissue sloughs away, and dies the following summer of pneumonia, wondering what it's all about. I'll stay in this cabin for a week, unless the thermometer rises at least to 50 below. "I say, Tess," he said the next moment, "don't you think that coffee's boiled long enough?" At the sound of the woman's name, John Messner became suddenly alert. He looked at her quickly, while across his face shot a haunting expression, the ghost of some buried misery achieving swift resurrection. But the next moment, and by an effort of will, the ghost was laid again. His face was as placid as before, though he was still alert, dissatisfied with what the feeble light had shown him of the woman's face.